Hey everyone, Rachel Weaver here. I'm on faculty at Regis University's Mile High MFA program. I'm making a series of videos in which we are exploring many options of ways to make money with an MFA. So today joining us is Roxanne Banks Malia. She has two titles at Lighthouse Writers Workshop. She is the Young Writers Program co-director, and she's also the Poetry Out Loud state coordinator. So what we're talking about essentially is arts administration, right? Jobs within arts administration. So thanks for being here, Roxanne. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here.
So can you tell us just a little bit about your job at Lighthouse? Just like a quick recap of the things that you do as an arts administrator in these two capacities.
Sure. Well, the first is the Young Writers Program. I co-direct that, and that means that I help teachers in schools and like youth program coordinators at youth centers or residential treatment centers, museums, libraries, places in the community where kids gather. I help them set up creative writing workshops. So that could be anything like bringing in a visiting poet or author to talk about what they're doing or to actually engage them in some workshops. Some of them have more like therapeutic value, like in a residential treatment center or homeless shelter. And some of them are like just purely writing arts based to help kids improve their writing in the classroom. So yeah, I'm working with writers and teachers and like school administrators to make the arts happen in classrooms where it's not necessarily happening anymore. So there's not a lot of space for creative writing, or a lot of teachers don't feel like they're good at teaching creative writing, whatever that means. I don't know. Obviously, you know, like I've done that. I've taught creative writing, so it seems funny that you would say that. But anyway, so yeah, and I teach some of those workshops, so I can be like a visiting poet, like at Children's Hospital. I do that once a week, so that's kind of part of that side of my job. And then I also, for the Poetry Out Loud, that's a national high school poetry recitation competition that's funded by the NEA and the Poetry Foundation. And so I coordinate that for the state. So that's getting high school teachers and people who work with teenagers to encourage their students to recite poems and perform them. So it's like part performance, part study of poetry, kind of acting, I guess, acting out a poem, and then competing with it. So we'll organize a state competition where kids from all over the state come and compete, and then they can the winner goes to Washington, D.C. and competes at a national level, and I get to go do that. Although I haven't gotten to go to Washington, D.C. because the world has fallen upside down, turned upside down, fallen apart, however you say that. I don't even sound like I have an MFA right now. I guess you don't have to be a good speaker to be a...
So my question, my first question, or I guess my second question is, what sort of advice would you have for somebody who is thinking, oh, maybe arts administration, maybe that would be a great way to use my MFA and make a living? Where would we look for these sorts of jobs? How would someone get started?
That's a great question. Well, I do know you can, so some real practical things would be like looking on the SCFD's website, their job board. So the SCFD, the Science and Cultural Facilities District, is the organization that's built around this tax that is applied. It's like 1 cent of every dollar spent it's a sales tax. So that funds all of the arts and cultural programming in the 5-county metro area. So they have a job board, and you can look and see there's always opportunities to be in, I would say, the 3 most common jobs that they have posted for arts administration or for cultural administration, you know, and museums, science, all of the other non-arts parts of our group. The most common jobs are in development, so writing grants and raising money, fundraising, marketing, and communications, and then programming. So and often youth programming, but yeah, they're always looking for someone who has great writing skills, especially for the communications and the development. I mean, that would be one place to start. I think you can also like reach out to the people that are in the world already. So like faculty members, I got some connections from my MFA professors for writing opportunities that then led me to arts administration, and then taking classes at Lighthouse or starting teaching at Lighthouse then opened me up to the awareness of the positions and knowing people who are already here.
Do you think that most arts administration jobs are full-time or part-time? Do you think it's just varied?
I think it depends on I think like through COVID, you didn't see as many full-time. I see a lot of full-time positions, but I don't know that would be what many people would consider a full-time salary, to be honest. Coming from a different field, I was in education, which I know people don't think you make very much money as the public educator, but it was more than some of the arts administration jobs. So I hope that's okay to say.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's like, good.
It's not necessarily a lucrative life, but it's a meaningful job, right? It's meaningful work.
Right. And how do you feel working as an arts administrator affects the balance between, your creative work and your work life, right? So do you feel like you have enough, mental space for your writing? Do you feel like it fuels your writing in some ways? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It depends. It's totally dependent upon how much I engage in the programming that like Lighthouse offers, or that other arts programmers are offered. The actual work itself, my job is varied enough that I am working with teachers and writers. And so I'm always in on those conversations about like, what are you writing about? Or how do we get people to express themselves in this way? And so that can be inspiring. But, I send a lot of emails, and I do a lot of developed this skill that I never had before, which is, I call it like spreadsheeting. I don't even know what that is. That's a skill, but that has even given me inspiration for things to write, like, a poem that's written in a spreadsheet, or and you see things like that, things like that will pop up in people's work. But it is dependent upon how much I open myself to all the great stuff that's going on. I do think that it is work that I can walk away from at the end of the day, where as a teacher, it was more difficult to do that. I'm always taking work home, but I think it's easier for me to set a boundary where I can do that. And then I also work a lot of places that are where you're working arts administration, you're working with people who are creative and they understand that. And so there's a lot of flexibility in that.
What's your favorite part of your job?
Oh, I love working with the artists and the writers. So helping, because I have a background in education, I like helping artists become better teachers, or teaching artists and talking about like how to do that, but then also learning about craft from their instruction. I think that's probably the best part of my job, like working with people like you.
And finally, what advice would you have for someone who is graduating with an MFA and is trying to figure out what they want to do, is feeling a little overwhelmed? Do you have any advice for that person?
Well, I don't know if I'm one to give advice, because I'm not very good at giving advice, but I would say, don't let the bastards get you down. Like, don't buy into the hype of all the other, or not hype, but just our culture's messaging, I think, can be really challenging when you're an artist or you're taking an alternative path. And you'll go through that, like, oh, I spent so much money on my education, or, I put so much time in, maybe you have a fully funded education, but you put so much time in, and like, now what do I do? And you can walk out with a manuscript, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing that you end up getting published. And you're just like salmon spawning. You're going upstream.
Yeah.
You'll have people saying things like, oh, what's all that time and money worth? You're not going to make any money. It's not like an MBA or, something like that, where you have this like very clear return on investment in terms of the things that are culture values. But it is, that's not probably why you got into writing in the first place or got into art. It was more of that, that energy and using your imagination and exploring new worlds and perspectives and trying on different perspectives and problem solving that got you into this. So try to hold true to that and show up to the page when you're feeling like nothing's working. Just try to show up every day to your page and find yourself there.
Yeah, good advice.
I
think I think that's the thing, right? There's not a super clear path, I think, for folks with an MFA. We all graduate and then, then like, now what? It's not as clear cut as some other paths, but I do think that it is a viable path. We just have to take our creative mind and that has been, fostered within, on the page and within our creative projects, and apply that to what we want to do in the world to make money. And certainly,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, staying within arts, arts administration, that means we're around like-minded people, and that can be very, very supportive and fueling. And then, you're doing a lot of good things in the world by bringing poetry and writing and the ability to, or the encouragement to express themselves to lots and lots of kids.
Yeah, and you do have a lot of power in arts administration to make change. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily like the change that you make when you're in a classroom where you can kind of see that stuff happening, but like I have the ability to reach out to different writers and performers that I'm seeing that might not be getting like a ton of press, or they might not be like there yet, and I can help them get work. We're giving our artists work, and I can also get programming into places where you don't get see like kids in a shelter for youth who are experiencing homelessness don't have access to the arts in the same way, and I can get programs there, like the places that I think like, oh, why don't we have something like that going somewhere? You always hear that, like, oh, you did it, then I can do that. So you have to find funding for it, but that's also kind of interesting to try to talk to people who have money and don't know what to do with it, or want to do something with it and don't know like what the great thing to do is, and to help them see places to do it that might not be what they would think. So it might not be the first thing they think of.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Roxanne. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.